All right, welcome back to the Golden Blab. Adam Kramer here, joined by Jim Zielinski, Kevin Lindsay. Well, I just talked to Kevin, actually. Jim, we were saying, like, with some of the interview episodes that we do, it can be hard with three people because you end up it's a lot of like dead air.
Yeah.
Crowd of crosstalk, you name it. So we're going to like share off duties as we get deeper into kind of our update cycle. But that's what we set out to do today. You and I actually have spent a good chunk of our day talking about these exact things, and we're going to talk about it now in real time, which is the new courses. So we've revealed the new logos. We've revealed the new locations. We have not revealed screenshots and videos. That stuff is coming very, very soon. But we're going to try something different, which is really let you talk about some of the inspiration and specifically with the 5 new courses that you design, I think, because that is new to the game. But before we talk about the 5, let's talk about your inspiration. You are much further ahead of the rest of the development cycle in the GT world. But when you sit down and start to think about, hey, I think it'd be really cool if we played here, like, what does that process look like for you?
Well, for me, I start with a couple things. First is where I personally think would be a fun place to golf. We have the whole world to choose from. And as you know, we've gone to like exotic locations and different places. And then the other thing that comes into play is, what haven't we done in a while, or what have we done too much of in the recent years? For example, if we've done 3 years in a row of a Scottish style links course, I'll say, well, let's take a break from that and give them something else to play this year. There are certain themes that they always like we get data back that shows the gameplay, what they like and what they don't. The tropical courses are very popular with palm trees. So I think we always try to include one of those, or at least some variant of that. I think a lot of our play is in the winter in the Midwest and places like, there's an escapist element of those courses that it's like, this is kind of nice to see on a dreary,
it's real.
dark
I
winter
feel
day.
it when I play. Yeah, it's very real.
So that's really the two main things that we'll look at.
So it's hard though, because you have done so many courses. This is our 35th anniversary. So how much time do you agonize over trying not even duplicate, but
a lot. They're paying for a new product. They want something that's new. It's hard to do because golf itself is, we're kind of locked in with what we can do by our pars. I mean, we don't have a par 15 hole out there or anything, but, so with a par 5, for example, there's only, so much you can do. I generally like to have them drive the greens in 2. So that limits your distance. That's on the hole front. On the course front, even though we do tropical courses, there's different elements of those tropical locations that you could play off of. Some are more rocky, some are more sandy. Some have, some mountainous volcanic activity, things like that. So there's different elements that we can bring, even though it's a tropical location, that can change up the way we play the course.
Well, that's a good segue, I guess, to talk about this year's courses. And the first one that we can talk about, I guess, is Bahama Isles.
Mm-hmm.
So Tarpon Bay, Bahamas. Here's the other thing that I don't know if people realize, because I've written, you will come up with the course. You will come up with the original course names until legal shoots it down.
Yeah.
And then you will write kind of a description, and then what we'll do, and what I've done historically, because I enjoy this part of it, is take your description and just really kind of edit it a bit, but then add a couple of tweaks on the marketing side. But that is the original thing. You do pretty intense research.
Yeah.
When you're doing this, so when you're looking at specifically at a Tarpon Bay, Bahamas, like, where did you come up with that?
Well, what I do is I use a lot of Google Earth, and I use a lot of different mapping programs that I'll look at the whole world to see what are different interesting geological formations and things that I can use to make the golf course. So a lot of times okay, we're looking at a tropical course. I know obviously what the tropical areas are, and then I'll research, do any of these have like a unique feature about them or something that would be fun that we can put into the courses. So for the Bahamas course, I noticed there's an area, and the Bahamas are kind of unique in this aspect, where they have a lot of islands. It's not one main island with a volcano like some other Caribbean countries. This Bahamas are a lot of little islands. So I thought, well, this would be a lot of fun. We really haven't had one of these in a while. I think the Seychelles course that we did a few years ago was similar, but not quite. This gives you the opportunity of island hopping, which I think is really a lot of fun. We really limit where your landing areas are so that, if you don't want to be in water, you have to kind of hop from island to island and go from place to place on your way to the green. That gives me a lot of flexibility when I'm creating the courses. So I can determine by distances what's more challenging. I can put an island out there that's a little harder to get, a little smaller. So for me, when I first saw that area, I said, oh, this would make a really fun course because we could do those aspects.
It's interesting. My perception of it, having spent some time with it, is you're right. It doesn't look like any tropical course we've done. It has a different feel about it. And the islands, when you've played this game enough, you think you understand, I got to hit it here or go here. The islands create a lot of thought.
Right.
We've watched other players who have beta tested this really kind of look at this bit. Where the hell do I go? And not only that, but setup to setup, I think it's going to offer up a lot of different opportunities.
Well, that's the whole
try
point.
Different things. Yes.
Right. Like especially on par fives, there are multiple opportunities, different directions and different places to land. So what I think is a lot of fun based on wind or other conditions, you may not play it the same way you did last time. You can say, well, last time I hit this island, the other time I'm going to go for this island. Or there may be islands that are not accessible because the wind's not at your back. So a lot of those things kind of come into play. And I thought if we have a variety of islands, why not put more out there than kind of like pigeonholing the guide to say you have to go this route only. I like to have those multiple routes to the whole.
It's also beautiful. Back to your point originally, it even now as we evaluate this in the summer, I think it's one of the more just cosmetically beautiful. Like we've upped our game when it comes to the looks of these things, and it's a great way to complement your designs. And I think this course really speaks to that. Let's go to the next course.
Okay.
We're going to go far, far away to Sahara Dunes, which I believe is in Algeria.
And,
yeah. So, okay, we've done a dune type course in the past, partial dunes, and that's kind of what I'm getting at because it's funny. I was walking by testing the other day, and the first hole of this was up, and not only did I stop, but we gathered around just to look at the background, just the general look at this thing because we were all kind of staring there and just in disbelief, which was fun. So talk a little bit about Sahara Dunes and kind of what the inspiration was there.
Well, this again, we like to go to desert locations. We've done a variety of those. Some are mountainous, some are flat. But we did do the Safari Dunes a few years back, and that started out in the dunes area near the coast, and that kind of wanders into the savannah. And the first, I think first 5 or 6 holes are near the dunes. And I always thought it was really fun. I always thought those holes were really fun. And it was almost like a challenge, like, well, can we do a whole course based on this? So a lot of it was kind of open whether we were going to go to that location or not until we did some tests to see if we could get the dunes to work. And when we found out we could with the lighting and everything like that, the technique that we used to create the dunes, I realized, okay, we can get this to work. So once we had that, I said, let's go for this. And similar to the Bahamas course, this is one where there are patches of green that you need to hit, and you're surrounded by sand. So there's also some elevation that you have to deal with because these are high dunes. I mean, when I was doing the research, I didn't realize how high these dunes, some of them get to 200 feet high, in some of these areas of the Sahara. So I said, well, this will be a lot of fun. We can use those not only as a texture and a place to use as a hazard for where you land, but also a blocking mechanism for the shots where you may not be able to access an area because the dune is too high. So we did, being all sand, it was a little bit, monotonous at some point. So we did add some oasis areas. There'll be a little bit of water. It's not much, but it'll be generally in the valleys where you would see an oasis. And so there's some water, but for the most part, the dunes really, I think, are a lot of fun. And the artist did a great job making those things look great.
I was going to say the exact same thing. We'll talk about the artist in a sec, but it's as creative, I think, as we've ever used sand. Because when you think of sand, you think of sand traps, you think of this, and now you're in the ebbs and flows of this area, and it's going to create a lot of shots hitting around or avoiding these obstacles.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of lofted club sets too, because there's not a big potential to roll as much as like the big C3s, and those are not going to be as prevalent here because there really just isn't enough grass to roll on. So I think you're going to see a lot of target golf here, which will
and you said it. It's kind of like more traditional when you think of Golden Tee, some shortcuts, like some of the older school style of like you kind of know where you need to hit, maybe, but you got to hit it. And
you're not going to hide a lot of shortcuts out in a big, massive zone. So they're going to be very apparent, and that's kind of fun too.
Just like in Bahamas, though, there's a couple of different ways to tackle them. There's layers to the shortcuts, right? And risk associated. Do you want a longer shot in?
A lot of the shortcuts will have some vegetation and trees that you don't want to get too close to, or else will block your your approach shot. So there are some other hazards there besides just the sand. I mean, we do have palm trees and things like that. So there's other things to navigate around.
And as we transition to the other courses, I will say you hit the nail on the head. The artist, this is a year-long process. And it starts with you drawing things on a piece of paper and coming up with these locations. And then us testing your designs in a very, rough format in that we're not
I can go through that
the full
just
art.
real quickly.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so what I do once I come up with the design is I put it into a we use a program called 3D Max, and I'll make a 3D model of the basic of the hole. I mean, where the sand traps are, where the green is. So I have I guess it would be very similar to like the way a comic book does you have the line artist, and then you have the guy who does the coloring. So I'm kind of like the line artist. I make the basic shell of what the hole is, where all the sand traps are, it is what we're going to eventually play, but it doesn't look good yet. So then I'll hand that off and I can play that there on my end, make sure that all the dimensions are right, make sure all the measurements are working. Then I hand that off to the artist, who then create the art, map all the polygons and make it look beautiful, add final trees, all that stuff. And then they're just do amazing work there.
And right now, like literally this time of year, this week, next week, are about as intense times up till like the weeks we ship the product, because it's pencils down. And then obviously goes into QA, which is exciting. And it's also why we want to show these designs a little later in the project, to show everyone them in their finalish state. And I will say this next course, for whatever reason, when you talked about it, had my interest high. And it is Lexington Stables, which is in Fayette County, Kentucky. And I guess the name kind of speaks for itself, Jim, if you want to jump right in.
Well, we're always looking for places, like I said, different locations that we haven't been to. I like the idea. We've done some farm courses in the past, which kind of worked out well. They had a combination of being open, yet some kind of strategic areas that had clusters of trees. So I was kind of looking for something like that as I was kind of scouting the locations. And I thought, well, this would be really interesting in the Lexington area, which is just outside of Louisville in Kentucky, where it's the horse racing capital of the world. That's where a lot of horse racing breeders and trainers reside. And there's just a lot of racehorse stables in that area. And when you look at in either whether it was Google Earth or in just photos and reference photos, it's a really beautiful area. It's a lot of green.
Yeah.
But I thought, this is kind of neat. It's kind of like a combination of a links course / farm course. It's like, this would be kind of fun because there's not a lot of forested areas. It's pretty open, but we do have horse pastures and those areas that we can shoot through and around and over, barns, things like that. So we've done courses like that in the past. This is just a lot different than those because, it's a look that people haven't seen before in Golden Tee.
And for those who have played the game for a long time, mud is back. Mud is one of the most maybe the most diabolical surface I think we have. I don't know where it stands with snow, but mud is...
it might be worse than snow. Yeah. I think it is.
And I say that in an endearing way, but it's a real obstacle because if you hit it in mud, you're going to stay in mud. You are not going to go anywhere. So the other thing that stands out again, using the horse, using the environment in a really weaving it into a Golden Tee course, it very, very cool. Awesome shortcut of shots. There's more elevation because of the hills, I think, than maybe not elevation, but you got like some rolling hills, which adds a little bit of character. And it is open, but I just love the feel of this on the early going. I've always Woodland Farm is one of my favorite personal courses ever. Yeah. It's not that. It's not life on a farm. No. But it's like the uncle of that course, I guess.
Yeah, and Woodland Farms really had more forested areas than this one does. This one has very few of those. We have little clusters of trees, but not a big forest anywhere.
We've also redone our horses, and they look fantastic. I've been involved for whatever reason in the creation of these new horses from start to finish. And while I joke, they add character to this design. It's just, I don't know, the same way people kind of gravitate towards tropical courses. There's something very welcoming about this that I've seen early on, and I'm excited for everybody else to experience it. All right, so we've got two more to go. Let's talk about Palmetto Coast, which is obviously in one of the golf capitals of the world in Myrtle Beach. And, it's an interesting strategy that I know you really like and I really like, which is a golf course, more or less, right? A course that for whether you're playing in dunes, you're playing on a mountain, or you're playing in snow, you're playing in mud, we also give an option of something that's a little bit more traditional every year. And this is that course.
We go to a lot of crazy locations. And some of those crazy locations, our players like a lot. But then we also noticed that players also like a little more traditional approach. And so what I kind of try to do every year is find some traditional golf areas, not necessarily a course that we're trying to emulate, but an area that is kind of very closely related to golf, the golf fans. And that's what Myrtle Beach is. Obviously, that it's a huge travel area for golf. There are dozens of courses in that area. And I said, well, why don't Golden Tee? We should add our name to the list. Now it's not going to be around the go-kart tracks and all the other touristy stuff that you're going to see near the beach. It's just set in that area, and the approach here is to be like a normal golf course set in that area of South Carolina. So it's going to be more traditional. It won't be necessarily easier. It's going to still have its challenges, but it's just something that when a guy who's really into traditional golf walks up, he says, "Oh yeah, this is kind of what I'm used to."
I think it has a chance. Yeah, because you have more trees. This is more like
we have big tall pine trees. Yeah,
and I think it's I don't know, like country club golf, right? Or really vacation elite
vacation
greens,
golf. Yeah,
the green feeds now that are going to cost you, God knows, $300, $400, $500 a round. Like this feels like that course, right? And beautiful vegetation at the same point. Like there's some really, I think, nice details in some of the flowers and some of the other things. And the last thing I would say is there's some very cool shot making opportunities that I saw early on this that you can get creative with tee heights and club elevations. And I think players that play a lot or not are going to have an opportunity to really kind of experiment.
Yeah, there's a lot of water, a lot of water on this course. So little ponds and lakes to avoid. So yeah, I think it's a fun course.
All right. And last but certainly not least, is Basin Lake, which is Lake Tahoe, California. Obviously, they just held a big golf tournament in Lake Tahoe, which early on in this process, I remember talking with you about, like, hey, it's kind of become this celebrity weird extension of golf, right? And and give us a little information about picking Basin Lake.
Well, this is something like we have our kind of our grand themes that we've used, like desert course or tropical course. Well, mountain course is obviously one of the ones that we've used through the years. And so I don't always want to place everybody way up in the top of the mountains. Like we do that occasionally every few years or every, like several years, we'll put one way up there, like in the height of the elevations. But what I thought was neat about Lake Tahoe is you've got mountains right next to, or at least very high hilly areas next to a massive lake. So you can combine the two. So there's a lot of fun, I think. There's a lot of elevation changes, nowhere near what some of our previous mountain courses have had, but there are going to be elevation changes here in combination with golfing around that huge lake. And that the combination of those two, I think, is a lot of fun.
It's first off, also visually, we call our skybox right behind the course. I think it's the most
it's beautiful,
beautiful skybox we've ever done.
Yeah,
and that does have an impact, right? We think about playing these things over and over. It's incredibly welcoming, and I remember playing it with you a couple weeks ago. There were a couple of holes. The elevation is such an interesting discussion in this. It's not necessarily drastic. There are holes with big changes, but there's some subtle elevation changes to me that felt very different things you did. A green that's elevated up enough where I was coming up short on a fairway wood.
Yeah, you're going to need to use your flybys and your to make sure that you see those, because you might not notice it off the tee, but when you get up there, you go, oh, gee, that green is up a little bit, and that'll affect your approach shot for sure. But that they go up and they go down. So we go both ways on those elevation changes, which is kind of fun. And there's a lot of downhill stuff, but then there's some subtle uphill stuff that makes it a little challenging.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely. I think it's beautiful. I really do, and it was a course that jumped out to me from the very beginning. Now, I won't ask you about these because you don't really have to do a whole lot, which is nice. TPC San Antonio and TPC River Highlands. TPC San Antonio, of course, in Texas. We wanted to have it is the mecca of Golden Tee. When you look at where games are being played, TPC River Islands, it's a course that is a regular PGA Tour stop. I got to do some research on these. It's like it's about 100 years old.
Nice.
It's been renovated a ton. It's cool that a course like that can now, with the equipment and everything these guys are doing, withstand the test of time. And there's some drivable holes on that. It's going to be a little bit scoreable, and those will be the PGA Tour courses coming this year. Now, before we let you go, I did want to ask you about something different this year, which is our reteed courses. So we've recreated courses in the past of courses graphically we wanted to do. What we're doing this year essentially is saying, hey, we know that you guys love these courses as is based off data and other factors. We're going to add all new value into these by recreating environments. Easier said than done. I'll say that. Easier said than done. And so the 3 courses that we chose this year, really that you chose, Rocky Hollow, Pine Coast, and Bear Lodge, three different courses that ultimately complement some of our others well. So what we decide to do this, and you go in and using Rocky Hollow as an example, this course never had multiple tee sets like we do now.
No.
So you had to make it work. And
Right.
what was that process like?
Well, it was a little hard because, like I said, a lot of our current courses were already mapped out for changing those tees as we go from season to season. The older courses were locked in. They had this is what you play, this is what you got used to. But because of that, it gives you an opportunity to see something different, because we do have the technical ability of changing and moving the tees now, which we didn't have way back then. So now with Rocky Hollow, for example, people are familiar with a lot of these holes, but they're now going to be teeing off from some areas that they're not used to at all, and a pretty good variety of changes. So I was looking today, and there's one tee area. Like normally they tee off from the center, and in the new hole, the overall distance of the hole doesn't change a whole lot, but we have one tee that's about 175 yards to the right, and then another one that's about 180 yards to the left. So the ability of accessing that green is a little bit different. On the par threes, huge differences. Yeah. What they're used to, maybe they had a 150-yard par three that was the same all the time. Now you're looking at anywhere from 60-yard hole to a 220-yard hole, and a huge variety in between. What's kind of nice is, like, this is the chance to add that variety and allow players to play that course in a way that they've never played it before.
Yeah, I think when we've grown up in these courses that have multiple tee sets, as a player, you're looking like, where is it going to go from here? Like, where, and this, you just, Rocky Hollow, or it's just the course you knew, and the par threes in particular on that hole, I think are pretty, like, I feel like I've associated myself, this is what the shot is. When you go on the other side of the hole, right? Or having to do something like that.
And then there's also some what used to be a normal par four that now is drivable. So
I love that
also
too.
Adds something to it. And the same with Bear Lodge, I always thought was a very long course. And you kind of got locked into where you needed to hit the tee shot, especially on the par fives. Like, there was a specific spot you needed to hit it. That's kind of opened up now, where some of the holes aren't as long, and now there's multiple places to place that tee shot instead of going for one target area. So it really makes all these things kind of a lot more fun, because there's more thinking involved.
Pine Coast, another great example, hole 18. I vividly remember that hole kind of playing a huge factor at the end of, countless games and live events that we've run. And it's a difficult hole. It's a really fair, challenging hole. And I had to look like, well, where are these going to be, right? Because there were shots that I know that especially experienced players learned that you're going to have to completely rework.
Yeah, rework.
And it's really, really neat. So I don't, after looking at it closely, like this week in particular, I don't envy your job on this, because, in these instances where you built these courses, the idea to do multiple tees, it just didn't
wasn't
exist.
there. Yeah. We kind of have to shoehorn it in, but I think it worked. I think, and there's other opportunities and further courses out there that, and maybe there's a course that, didn't play as well as we would have liked for some reason. Well, now here's our chance to kind of change it up a bit and maybe add some spark to a course that didn't do as well, or vice versa. Add variety to a very popular course. So it opens us up to a lot of potential.
That's a great point too. And for these, the way we've done the tees and the markers, and we change it seasonally, these courses are going to be along for the ride. And it and again, not just prize play, but online play, these courses now are going to get a front center look at a completely different experience. And in cases that you mentioned, different scoring opportunities, like different ways to score than you were used to. And that will open up some doors based on existing golden tee pars from year past, other things.
Yeah,
and,
definitely. We made sure to keep regular par the same, but there's absolutely will be changes in Golden Tee Par.
So there you have it. That is a snapshot of the courses that we're going to be playing on this year very soon. We don't want to give too much information because we have a ton of stuff still to come, and we also want you guys to experience it. Jim, now in the process, right? You're working on next year's courses already, correct?
Yeah.
You have obviously you have a tough job of bouncing back and forth. I know right now.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to put your mind back at, like, because a lot of these courses I designed over a year ago. So it's like now that they're at the stage where they're ready to be released, I kind of have to put myself back in that. Oh yeah, this is what I was thinking back then. So yeah, but it doesn't take long to get back there.
Well, it's been a blast to see. It's been a lot of fun, obviously, to talk about internally. And now that we're getting information out, we're going to showcase a lot more of these designs here in the future. Again, thank you to the artists. If you are listening to this for whatever reason.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful job this year.
Really wonderful job. And we've got work to do. So, Jim, thank you again for joining us. I'm sure we will have you on again to talk more things with our latest updates. That's it. Well, Jim, I'm Adam. We will talk to you guys soon.